While education funding is garnering lots of attention, the discussion can also be pretty confusing. Let's make sure we're all on the same page. While some people may use basic education funding as a catch-all phrase to mean 100% of state K-12 education funding, basic education funding with a capital B actually refers to a specific line item in the state budget. The basic education funding line item makes up the bulk of money that school districts get from the state each year. This year, the state will send over $5.5 billion to schools in BEF, which represents about 55% of the state's total K-12 education dollars. In addition to BEF, there are line items in the state education budget for special education, transportation, pension costs, Social Security costs, food services, school construction, just to name a few. Unlike some of the other line items, there are no real strings attached to the use of BEF, so districts can use these dollars as appropriate. It can be used to hire a teacher, implement curriculum, or add a classroom. So how does the state determine how much BEF a school district gets? There must be a formula, right? Wrong. Unlike many of the other education line items, such as transportation, pension, and Social Security, which are driven to districts based on clear and consistent formulas, there is currently no formula to distribute BEF to districts. This wasn't always the case. From 1966 to 1983, Pennsylvania had a solid formula for distributing BEF that was based generally on district wealth, instructional costs, and number of students, with some additional support for poverty and sparsity of population thrown in. In 1983, PA modified this formula slightly and named it the Equalized Subsidy for Basic Education, commonly known as ESBE. ESBE remained in place until 1992. With the exception of a brief 3-year period from 2008 to 2011, in which another formula was in place, there has been no real formula for the distribution of BEF since 1992. Without a real formula, the concept of hold harmless has dictated that districts receive at least as much basic education funding this year as they received the prior year, driving funds to districts without regard to changes in their demographics. Over the past decade, about 70% of school districts have seen a reduction in enrollment, with the remaining districts experiencing increases in enrollment. Using hold harmless as a placeholder for a funding formula completely ignores these trends, as well as other associated with poverty rates, population of English language learners, charter school enrollments, and local tax burdens, just to name a few. In addition to the underlying concept of hold harmless, over the past few years, supplements have been added to BEF targeting additional resources to a handful of lucky school districts. These supplements have focused on an ever-changing array of factors, giving increases in funding to very limited numbers of school districts based entirely on politics and making the current distribution of BEF totally unpredictable. The current education funding situation and lack of funding formula is certainly unacceptable. And if nothing changes for education funding, nearly 50% of school districts won't have enough revenue to cover their mandatory and necessary costs by 2017-18. With that in mind, it's time to put in place a predictable, reliable, and sustainable BEF formula to ensure that all students in all school districts across the Commonwealth continue to receive the quality education they deserve.